For today's video, we are going to talk about the 6 core claims of globalism by Manfred B. Steger. And before all of that, this video is for educational purposes only, and we are allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as a educational material. Let's tackle the claim 1, which is the globalization is all about liberalization and global integration of markets. This claim is central to the ideology of market globalism, which is the most dominant narrative in the discussions of globalization. We are going to break down the claim 1. Globalization as an economic process. Market globalism presents globalization primarily as an economic process, focused on the expansion of free markets. The ideology promotes the idea that globalization is synonymous with the liberalization of trade, investment, and finance on a global scale. It suggests that opening up national economies to international markets will lead to greater economic efficiency, innovation, and wealth. Number 2. Liberalization of markets. Liberalization involves reducing government regulations and barriers to trade such as tariffs, quotas, and capital controls. This process is seen as an essential for creating a competitive global market where goods, services, and capital can move freely across borders. Proponents argue that liberalization leads to economic growth, higher standards of living, and increased consumer choice. Global integration of markets. Global integration refers to the increasing interdependence and interconnectedness of national economies. Through globalization, national economies become part of a single integrated global market. This integration is facilitated by advances in technology, transportation, and communication, which make it easier for business to operate internationally. Market globalism's normative assumptions. Market globalism assumes that globalization is inherently beneficial and inevitable. It promotes the idea that market liberalization and global integration are natural and desirable processes that will lead to prosperity for all. The ideology often downplays or ignores the negative consequences of globalization, such as inequality, environmental degradation, and cultural homogenization. The role of neoliberalism. The economic theory that emphasizes free markets, privatization, and deregulation is closely aligned with market globalism. It argues that reducing the role of the state in the economy and allowing market forces to operate freely will result in the most efficient allocation of resources. Implications of the claim. Support for free trade agreements. Market globalism supports international trade agreements that reduce tariffs and other barriers to trade. These agreements are seen as essential for integrating global markets. Promotion of multinational corporations. The ideology also supports the expansion of multinational corporations, which are seen as key drivers of global economic integration. Criticism and opposition. Despite its dominance, market globalism has been criticized by various groups, including those who argue that globalization benefits the wealthy at the expense of the poor and exacerbates global inequalities.
Claim 3. Nobody is in charge of globalization. The third mode of discontesting globalization hangs on the classical liberal concept of the self-regulating market. The semantic link between globalization market and the adjacent idea of leaderlessness is simple. If the undistributed working of the market indeed preordain a certain course of history, then globalization does not reflect the arbitrary agenda of particularly social class or group. Globalization, exemplified by the smartphone industry, is driven by the self-regulating dynamics of the global market rather than any single entity or group. Various independent actors such as miners, manufacturers, and consumers contribute to the process, but no one controls it entirely. As a result, globalization unfolds organically without any centralized leadership. The idea that nobody is in charge of globalization has both benefits and drawbacks. Pros include increased efficiency, innovation, diverse opportunities, adaptability, and reduce political bias. Cons involve a lack of accountability, rising inequality, vulnerability to crisis in cultural homogenization. Overall, market-driven globalization offers advantages and innovation and flexibility but can also lead to significant social and economic challenges.
Claim 2 of globalization possesses that globalization is inevitable and irreversible. This means that association of inevitability, reversibility is rooted in the belief of economic, technological, and cultural forces that driving globalization forward. Proponents argue that these forces create interdependencies among nations, making it impossible to revert the pre-globalization state. This perspective often frames globalization as a historical progress that cannot be undone. Some example of this is the technological advancement, economic integrations, cultural exchange. The technological advancement is the rise of the internet and digital communication as the connected people and business across the globe, make it easier to conduct international trade and share informations. The economic integrations, trade agreements such as the North America Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA or the European Union, exemplify how countries have committed to reduce barrier to trade and foster economic operations. Cultural exchange. The global spread of cultural phenomena such as Hollywood, movies, international cruise, and music genres illustrate how cultural globalization is reshaping societies worldwide. The advantage of this is the economic growth, access of resources, cultural exchange. Economic growth proponents that argue that globalization can lead increased economic growth, such as countries gain access to larger market and investment or opportunities. Access to resources. Globalization allows countries to access resources, technology, and expertise that may not be available domestically, enhancing productivity and innovation. Cultural exchange is foster the cultural exchange in understanding, promoting diversity, global awareness. The disadvantage of this is the less of local culture, economic disparities, and environmental concern. The loss of local culture is critics argue that globalization can lead to erosion of local cultures and traditions such as global ban and practices overshadow indications. 1. Economic disparities. While globalization may create wealth, it can be also exacerbate inequalities with benefits and often concentrated among the wealthy and powerful, leaving a margin communication behind. The environmental concern is that increased global trade can lead to environmental degradations, such as production and transportation contribute to populations and resources displations.
Claim 4. Globalization benefits everyone in the long run. States that although globalization may cause problems in the short term, it will ultimately benefit everyone. This is because globalization boosts global economic growth, spread new technologies, and increase cultural exchange, leading to greater overall improvement and connectiveness over time. Its many positive aspects include an unprecedented expansion of investment and trade, opening up to international trade of the world's most populous region and opportunities for more developing countries to improve their standards of living. The increasingly rapid dissemination of information, technological innovation, and proliferation of skilled jobs. Example: economic growth. Global trade and investment have led to significant GDP increases in some countries. 2. Technology access. The expansion of the internet has connected more people in developing regions. 3. Cultural exchange. International media has gained widespread popularity enriching cultural experiences. Pros. 1. Economic prosperity. Globalization creates new markets, jobs, and stimulates economic development. 2. Technological innovation. Globalization facilitates the dissemination of cutting-edge technologies and enhancing productivity. 3. Cultural interaction. Globalization promotes greater cultural understanding and cooperation through increased exposure to diverse cultures. Cons. Inequality. Globalization can widen the gap between the wealthy and poorer regions. 2. Cultural erosion. The spread of dominant cultures can threaten local traditions and languages. 3. Environmental issues. Increased economic activity can lead to environmental degradation such as pollution and resource depletion.
Hello everyone, I am Dika Tabas and I'm member of Group 2, and I am going to discuss to you about globalization for the spread of democracy to the world. The fifth decontestation change links globalization and the market to the adjacent concept of democracy, which also played a crucial role in liberalism, conservatism, and socialism. Globalists typically decontest democracy through its proximity to market and the making of economic choices. At delivered through the 1980s in the particular variant of conservatism, freedom calls discourse analysis of relevant texts reveals that the globalists tend to treat freedom, free markets, free trades, and democracy as synonyms terms. Yeah. What is a globalism? Globalism is a process of increased interconnectedness and interdependence among countries, driven by the trade, communication, and cultural exchange. It results in the integration of economies, societies, and global scales. And democracy is a system of government where power is vested in the hands of the people. In democracy, citizens have the right to participate in decision making, typically through voting, free and fair elections. And let me discuss to you also the liberalism, conservatism, and socialism. So the liberalism is a typically and philosophy, ideology that emphasize individuals' freedom, democracy, and the protection of human rights. While the conservatism is a political and social philosophy that emphasizes value of tradition, order and stability, and it advocates for the preserving and established institution, customs, and moral values, and is often skeptical or radical change. So lastly, the socialism. A socialism is a political and economic system where the means of production, such as factories, land, and resources, are owned or controlled collectively by the community, typically through the state or other public institution. There are an example of globalization for the
Globalization requires a global war on terror. According to prior statements, the concept globalization requires a global war on terror implies that the interconnectivity and complexities of modern world requires a coordinate international efforts to eradicate terrorism. Globalization creates a complex context in which terrorism is a global concern demanding worldwide actions. The global war on terror requires a diverse approach that encompasses military, intelligence, legal, and development operations to combat and prevent terrorism worldwide. Examples of globalization: International Terrorist Network. Example: Al-Qaeda and ISIS are prime examples of terrorist organization that operates on a global scale. They have cells and affiliates in multiple countries and use global networks for recruitment, training, and planning attacks. The responses is combating these organizations require international cooperation for intelligence sharing, military operations, and law enforcement efforts. Countries collaborate to dismantle these networks, often through coalition like Global Coalition to defeat ISIS. Cyberterrorism. Example: terrorist groups exploit the internet for propaganda, recruitment, and even cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. The use of social media by ISIS for recruitment and radicalization is notable instance. Global response. Countries need to work together to monitor online activities, develop cybersecurity strategies, and implement regulations to prevent spread of extremist content. This includes partnership with tech companies to remove terrorist content and disrupt online networks. Transnational terrorist training camps. Terrorist training camps in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, trained individuals for various nations who returned to their home countries to carry out attacks. The responses is military interventions, drone strikes, and diplomatic pressure were used to dismantle these camps, and additionally countries implemented programs to monitor and rehabilitate returning foreign fighters. Global travel and border security. Examples: the ease of global travel facilitates by globalization allow terrorists to move between countries using fake or stolen passports to evade detection. The response is countries enhance border security measures, including the use of biometric data, improve passports controls, and information sharing through systems like Interpol's database and the passenger name record or PNR system. So, the advantages of globalization is enhance the international cooperation. Globalization fosters cooperation among nations through international organizations and alliances, such as United Nations and NATO, to combat terrorism collectively. Share intelligence and resources enhance the ability to identify the disrupt terrorist networks. Number 2, improve communications and technology. Technological advancement and improved communication network enable faster and more effective responses to terrorist threats. International collaboration or cybersecurity helps protect and critical infrastructure for cyber attacks linked to the terrorism. 3. Economic growth and stability. Global economic independence can create incentives for peace and stability as nations work together to protect, share, and economic interests from disruption caused by terrorism. 4. Cultural exchange and understanding. Increased cultural exchange can reduce misunderstanding and prejudice addressing some root causes for extremism and fostering a climate